Hi, Kevin Blanche. Today I'm going to talk about deflation. I've talked about this before. Now let's talk about if you're a student or you're trying to understand, or more importantly, if you're a person with any kind of wealth, if you're just a living, breathing American or living, breathing European. I mean, my videos are intended not just for Americans here in the United States, but the Europeans too. They have benefited big time from the last decade via the inflation we witnessed. The average standard of living in Europe did go up. Everybody wants to talk about the financial crisis that went across Europe, but the weakening of our dollar and the strengthening of the euro was a mega windfall to everybody across Europe. Now deflation, which we started to have a couple years ago, and everybody was going, oh, deflation is a very good thing for a massive part of the population. Why? Because as a consumer, you spend money at the grocery stores. Deflation brings food pricing way down. Commodity price is a big component. It's probably the most reactionary thing there is to deflation or inflation. Gasoline prices, deflation. Of course, the lower the price of oil becomes, the cheaper gasoline. Okay? Housing, everything we buy goes down. The price of a house. Now, as the price of houses were imploding, if you're a younger person and it's time to buy a house, or build a family, or whatever, it's the best thing that could ever happen to you. Think about the difference between a person who bought a house 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, a young couple, or a person who bought one 6 months ago. Think about the amount of money they will spend on that mortgage. The person who bought it 5 years ago paid maybe $400,000 for a house that's really worth $200,000. And a person that paid $150,000 maybe 6 months ago or 3 months ago or yesterday, that's maybe in reality worth $200,000. The interest payments over time, how much wealth did this person save in compared to this person? So it's a mega huge deal. Deflation is a good thing for the most. Now the government's going to try to fool you and tell, oh no, deflation is horrible. Yeah, because the so-called asset class, as they've been termed historically. What is the asset class? People who own assets. Okay? Stocks, but stocks has been kind of an abstract component to this. Now you can't say it, because they do value on inflation and deflation, but it has performed extremely abstractly over the last 20 years. Okay? Here's the problem in America. Yeah, people traditionally that were the asset class were a small percentage. They own gold. They own farmers. They owned land. They owned all kinds of different things. Well, a vast majority of the United States population became asset class, and they didn't even know they became asset class via refinancing their mortgage on their house. Yeah, say you had a $50,000 mortgage and you kept borrowing, all of a sudden you got a $300,000 mortgage. You become the asset class. $300,000 is a big chunk of the average American's net worth. So your house becomes part of the asset class. So the deflation, here you're going, well, my gasoline prices, my food prices, but in the back of your mind, like, what about my house? So over the last 10 years, as your house price was growing, you didn't really worry about the other things because you were able to go use your house like a credit card, and you were so caught up because they're huge chunks of money. I mean, some of these houses, you paid $180,000, 2 years later you're borrowing $300,000, you pocketed $200,000, Now if you'd put it to work, which a few people did, it worked out for you, but now the thing about borrowing like that, you still have to pay it back. Well, so they've come down. So deflation is good historically for probably 90% of the population. In the 1930s, when we had mega deflation, the wealth of the freaking country was having absolute psychotic fits. And that, we had mega foreclosures going on then, but they come down. But it benefits the average person because their food bill, their oil bill, all the said things come down. And traditionally, our dollar will gain strength. And as our dollar gains strength, we gain strength. So as deflation, which we had a couple years, it's over. The deflation times that we had 2 years ago, they're done. They're over. We're back to inflating again. And so when you watch your stock prices, your 401k, it's like this. If your stocks are rising and the dollar is weakening, you're gaining nothing. You have to do the valuations. So the dollar went from we went from $1.22 to $1.37 in the last few months against the euro. Even more dramatic against the yen. And then the stock market gains 1,000 points. Do the math. Your real wealth lost money. Now, if the stock market is rising like it was last summer, and our currency is getting stronger, that's a twofold synergy. You're getting the country's getting richer. Okay? And same with Europe, vice versa. As the euro reels in and your stock prices go up, same thing, vice versa. Okay, so if the stock market is falling and your currency is weakening, the country is getting much poorer. Now, over the last decade, the stock market did absolutely nothing. Now, another thing people forget and you need to remember, when you watch the Dow, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, everybody's focused on the Dow. The Dow is not an equally weighted index. And if a stock underperforms, just because you have a Dow-weighted mutual fund, do you think you're tracking the Dow exactly? You're not. And I'll tell you why you're not. Think about GM. GM was the biggest component in weight value of the Dow. There's 30 stocks. Dow Industrials are 30 stocks. Okay, what did they do? They threw it out. Well, if you were equally weighted in there, you still owned it. You had to sell it at the bottom. So it underperformed. So there is a flaw and a fallacy that people, they suck up and watch this Dow. Just because the Dow, we're talking the 30 strongest companies so-called in America, or nothing American about it. And the S&P 500 does the same thing. If a stock starts to fail and do poorly, it gets thrown out and another one gets plugged in. So you need to think about that because your stock portfolio not necessarily is doing that. Look, if you own a broad section of stocks, say you got some GE, say you got this, that, say you had some GM. The Dow stays here because they throw it out and plug somebody else in. Not your portfolio. You took the big hit. So don't get caught up in that. Deflation is a good thing for much of America in the historical broader context. And if you're a young person and you don't own a house, it's the greatest thing that could ever happen to you. But the so-called asset class, it's a catch-22 because you need that house to go up. So I really call it a false sense of security. I really don't believe that it means shit. Everybody thinks they got all this money equity in their house. Well, the way the tax code, if you sell the house, you have to roll the asset back over. It gives you such a huge incentive to buy another house. So say you sell a house at X amount, you go buy it at X amount. Now, if you catch it right in the right time, you might get lucky, but it's very false sense of security. So I'm a big believer as an economist that I wish we would have much, much more deflation. I would have liked to see huge deflation happen. It was on its way. I thought this is going to be a healthy thing. We're finally going to take some medicine, clear this out, bring everything down. And if you're stuck in a house that you owe more on its worth, you know what you got to do. You either walk or you just gut it out and pay it off. And then then it's not going to matter. If you gut it out and stay in that house the whole time, and you just pay that house off like the generation before mine did, what does it matter? You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. That's your choice. And I know it hurts. You're freaking paying a big dime, but the other alternative, if it's too much on you, walk. Walk. Really. Life will come back again. This country is about second chances. Kevin Blanche, January 31st, 2011.